And we are now recording. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Sisters in Crime. Our guest speaker this evening is Annette. Now, watch me.
Dashofy.
Annette Dashofy, who is a best-selling author, and her series is the Zoe Chambers Mystery Series about a paramedic and deputy coroner in rural Pennsylvania. Annette's going to be talking to us tonight about our character arcs and development. So without further ado, Annette, you're on.
Thanks so much. Thanks for inviting me to be here. Yeah, this whole topic of character arcs is something that honestly I didn't really think about a whole lot when I was early on as I was writing the books. It was in the back of my mind, but you know, until several different people have asked me, like in the last year, to do a talk about the subject. It's like, oh, well, you want your character to grow from the beginning to the end. Subject, that's it. So I was forced, because people kept asking me, I've done a little bit more research, because what I was doing kind of by instinct, I needed to figure out a little bit in more detail. I will say that a great resource on the topic, because I'm just going to hit the tip of the iceberg, but a great resource on the topic is a book called Creating Character Arcs. And the author's name is K.M. Weiland, W-E-I-L-A-N-D. So if this is a subject you want to learn more about, I recommend that book, because a lot of the material that I found for tonight comes from there, my own experience plus from this book. So character arcs, in my mind, is where the character meets the plot. Of course, the characters need to be in a different place at the end of the book than they were in the beginning of the book. But there really are a lot of variations of these arcs. I have narrowed it down to basically three and a half. And if you look it up online, they'll have like whole lists of different types, but I think a lot of them are covered in these three. The first is the positive change arc, which is what we usually think of when we're talking about this subject. And in it, your character starts out lacking something in his life, and you want it to be internal, something that they're missing, and you can think about what the character needs versus what they want, and what they want versus what they need. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But I have this particular positive change arc broken down into two, which is where I get 3.5, or 4.5. So the first type of positive change arc, and these are basically your protagonists we're talking about, is the complete transformation. It's almost epic. And a few examples you can pull from movies are Luke Skywalker, Bilbo Baggins from The Hobbit, Harry Potter. And those stories, these epic stories of change, complete transformation change, are pretty much drawn directly from the hero's journey, which you've probably all read The Hero's Journey, or the writer's version of it. So that's the main one that a lot of people think about. A smaller version of the positive change arc is just growth, the character's growth. He grows, he doesn't undergo a complete transformation, but he must overcome something. Or maybe he learns something about himself. And again, this is from the protagonist's point of view that we're doing this. Now, another type of arc is referred to as the flat arc. And this is one that I had never really considered until I started reading up on the topic. And it's one where the hero doesn't really change. The hero doesn't, he's the hero at the beginning, he's the hero at the end, but he's the catalyst for change and growth in the characters around him. I've not done one of those yet. Might be fun to try. But here's the one that here's the one that fascinates me. Again, I didn't really consider it. It was something I think I was doing just instinctively, but it's called a fall arc. And I don't mean fall like autumn. I mean fall like falls from grace. This is a character that starts out as a good guy. He's happy. He's a normal person. And by the end of the story, is completely unrecognizable. Hamlet, as an example, Anakin Skywalker, also known as Darth Vader, is another big one. So these stories are usually tragedies, but this is also a great tool for us mystery writers to create authentic villains. So your character arc isn't necessarily just your protagonist, it can also apply to your villain. And I like to apply it to a lot of my characters. Maybe not, the ones that are just, showing up for a scene or two, but try to develop your secondary characters and let them have an arc too, whether it's a growth arc or a fall arc. And I did a panel just last week with Jonathan Mayberry, who, I don't know if you guys know him. He writes everything. He writes horror, and he's had a TV show based on his books, and he's a good friend of mine. I knew him back when. He also writes a lot of zombie books, and he's good friends with Stephen King to the point where he calls him Stevie.
Oh.
Yeah. And in this panel, we were talking not about arcs, but he was talking about developing villains. And I was like, that's exactly what this is he likes to develop his villains from a normal person, a normal guy, and just bad things happen, or he becomes corrupted, or maybe it starts out as a temporary change for the worse, but then he embraces the dark side, getting back to Darth Vader, or he's just become disillusioned with being a good guy, so he turns then. So there's so many different ways to look at this for developing our villains too. Then I'm just going to talk a little bit more about what the material that I have mined from reading up on the subject, and then I'm going to delve a little bit into how I used it in my stories. Some things you want to keep in mind as you're developing your characters is big lie, and this is something that your character believes, and it may be something that they want, but it isn't necessarily true. Do you have you guys seen the movie Secondhand Lions? It's a great movie. It's if you get a chance to rent it or to pull it up on Prime or Netflix, but it's about this teenage kid who his mom dumps him on the front door of these two weird old uncles.
Oh, I have seen that. Yes.
I love this movie. I could watch it a million times. It's so cute. And this kid, it's through his eyes, and it's this book, the book that I mentioned at the beginning, uses it as a example a number of times. And in his case, the lie for his character was that the people you love will always lie to you. That's what he believed. That's at the start. So his journey through that whole movie was to give up that lie, give up his dream, what he thought he needed, what he thought he wanted, was to live happily with his mother. Well, his mother's weirder than the two weird uncles, so that was never going to work out. So it was his journey, and you get to see the growth in that way. So I've been thinking, and Linda Lovely, when we were talking about what I was going to talk about tonight, she was asking about what was it you were saying, Linda? You wanted me to talk about the ending a long-term series and starting a new series. And I said, well, the long-term series, okay, but I haven't really had any luck finding a home for the new one, so I don't think I'm qualified to talk about that. But I have 10 books out in the Zoe Chambers series, and that's kind of a long-running series, and I'm working on an 11th. But I had no idea when I was writing the first book. If you'd have told me when I was writing Circle of Influence that I was going to have 10 books in the series, I would have laughed and asked you what drugs you were on. So you can't start out at book 1 and you have an arc figured out for 10 whole books. So my arcs and the stories behind them have changed. For Circle of Influence, that book by itself had its own arc, and Zoe grew from one sort of character into a more mature person at the end of it. But then I had signed a contract for that one and 2 more. I didn't know that the contract would go any further than that. So, okay, I wanted to have an arc that would carry over for those first 3 books. And I didn't do a lot of thinking about this at the time that I was doing it, but I'm going back and kind of dissecting the process now. I think at the very beginning, Zoe's lie, what her lie was telling herself, even before Circle of Influence. It goes to backstory, and it doesn't all come out until later in the book, some of it later in the series. But her father had died when she was 8, which was a big influence on her life. So her teen years, before the book even started, she was trying to replace that masculine role model. Basically, she was trying to find love in all the wrong places, to be quite simple. But she believes she needed a man. By the time we get to the start of Circle of Influence, she's already through that arc and telling herself a new lie, which was that she sucked at relationships, and the only way she could maintain a relationship with a man was to just be friends. And of course, yeah, I write murder mysteries, but there's Zoe and Pete. That's anytime that was always the question I would get at book signing events. Not anything about the murder or the killer or the plot, was when are Pete and Zoe getting together? So the first 3 books in the series dealt with that. Trying to, let's just be friends. And Pete too had his problems with relationships. So the whole first 3 books were basically trying to get beyond that belief that we can't ever be anything more than just friends. Now, at that point, I signed a contract for 3 more books. And that, I needed a new arc. And it kind of happened on its own at the end of the 3rd book that Zoe basically became homeless. And so the next 3 books were what I call her home sweet home search. She was trying to find a home. She went from sleeping on a friend's couch to sleeping on a coworker's couch to just bopping around. So she was trying to find her heart in the first 3 books and trying to find a home in the second 3 books. And then, though, after book 6, then I signed a contract for 4 more. So, okay, we need another arc. And that became her trying to make her family in those last 4 books. So there's kind of an overrunning theme. But your arcs need to be smaller than that too. Like I said, for the first book, that was the only arc I had going on in my mind. You can break it down further to have, each chapter needs an arc. Something has to happen in each chapter to make the characters grow. They have to be different, slightly different at the end. They're smaller, little spurts of growth. Even each scene, something has to happen in each scene to affect the characters.
Annette, I have a question came in for you, and it says, is your new series a spin-off of this series that you just described to us, or is it a totally new character?
It's totally new. I haven't written the whole book yet. I have four chapters done and a full synopsis and lots of ideas, and I'm really looking forward to writing it. But so far, I'm also looking for an agent. Yes, I have 10 books. I have 5 Agatha nominations, and I've hit the USA Today bestseller list, and I still cannot get an agent. So there you go. So what the heck, I'm still writing it, and I will publish it myself if I have to. I thought about having like a not really a spin-off, but maybe it's the new series is set in Erie, PA, which is like 3 hours north of where Zoe and Pete reside. And I've thought of maybe taking them up there and having them interact with the characters from the new series, but that's maybe a short story or something like that. I haven't really worked that out. So yeah, anyhow, I'm better with questions and answers than with lecturing, so I'm happy to just chat and answer questions. And
Well, there is another question that's it's how far will your series go?
the Zoe series, I don't know. As long as people, like I said, I finished up my contract. Linda Lovely and I can sob boohoo over our mutual former publishers. So I'm done with that. The 10th book was the last of the contract. Anything I do now will be, published on my own. I wrote the 10th book as if it might be the end. I kind of wrapped up all the loose threads and left Pete and Zoe in a fairly good place for them. But I've got this fan group on Facebook that constantly nags me, when's the next one coming out? And since I couldn't, wasn't having any luck with an agent for the new series, I said, well, in the meantime, I will just write another book. So I don't really have an end game in mind right now with it.
Okay. Now another question came in. How did you get your first agent for the first series?
you, my path to agents and publication looks a lot like that Family Circus cartoon where Billy gets off the school bus and goes all over the place. I I wrote another series that has never sold, has never been published. I, 2 books. It's back in like 2005, 2006, and it was set in a world of thoroughbred horse racing, and the protagonist is the racetrack veterinarian. I got in my first agent for that book at a pen writers conference where I met her and pitched to her, and she requested pages, and then that one thing led to another, and yeah, I signed with her and was yay, I made it. And then the book never sold, and she lost interest, and we parted company. I worked with another agent. We didn't really sign anything, but we worked quite closely together, a lot of phone calls for that same book. And things happened that she wasn't able to do anything with it. She actually wanted it as a film prospect because she was more of a film agent. And if you remember the TV show called Luck with Dustin Hoffman that was set in the world of thoroughbred racing, I'm not sure how many episodes aired, but it crashed and burned. And I think PETA sued the producers because horses died during the filming of it. And this agent's line was that racehorse stories were now toxic, which one never wants to hear when you're writing a racehorse mystery. Uh, where did where did Saucer go? Because she writes those too. Anyhow, so after that I didn't have an agent, and I never had an agent for the Zoe Chambers series. I was published with a small press that I was able to get my book contract without an agent. In hindsight, I think probably when I was offered that first contract, that might have been a good time to then go back to some of the agents who, you know, I'd had a good relationship with and say, hey, I need help now. And I didn't do that. I just decided, well, I'm going to keep my 15% and represent myself. And that was a bad decision. But anyhow, so now I'm back to looking for an agent.
Okay. If anyone would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, you're certainly welcome
Let's
to do
chat.
that. I don't see any other questions. So how did you pick a coroner as your sleuth? That's my question.
Well, the series started out the idea for it started out as a short story. I wrote a short story that was nominated for a Derringer Award back in 2007. It was called A Signature in Blood, and it featured Pete Adams, who is the male half of the protagonist team. And the only reason I wrote it, I never thought about turning it into a book. The reason I wrote it, was because I wanted to write from a male point of view, just to see if I could do it. And in that short story, Zoe is kind of the sidekick. So he's at the murder scene, and she's the deputy coroner that comes to the murder scene. And I didn't have any, thoughts of taking it beyond that until the racetrack mystery didn't go anywhere. So then, and I see Ellis's question. I'm going to answer that coming up right now, because whenever I decided to flesh it out and make a whole novel out of it, I decided, first of all, to have Zoe be the protagonist, the main protagonist, rather than Pete, because I wanted it to be a woman's story. And I tacked on a bit about her being a paramedic because, yes, I was an EMT on a local ambulance service when I was much younger. And so I knew that world. And we had a couple of the paramedics on the ambulance crew who also worked as deputy coroners. I've since been told that nowadays they don't do that. So I was like, oops. but you know, that's one of the reasons I fictionalized the locations in my book, even though they're based right here where I live, instead of Washington County, which is where I live. I call it Monongahela County, so that if I goof like that, I can. That's how it's done in Monongahela County. You know, sorry.
Fiction.
It is. It's fiction. Take creative license.
Well, definitely. We had a coroner speak to us, and it is a very local thing,
Mhm.
what their qualifications are, whether they're elected, whether they're appointed. I
Oh
know,
yeah,
yeah,
coroners and medical examiners are different stories. Coroners are elected, medical examiners are not. And I've taken citizens police academies. I've gone to the morgue. I've toured the morgue. I've gone in the cooler. I've talked to coroners around here. Um, so I have never been a coroner, but I just like I've never been a cop. And Pete's the chief of police, so I've thank goodness for Lee Laughlin and Writers Police Academy and our local police academies too. It's a lot of research, no matter what the characters are.
right, right. There's
Very
another question.
helpful.
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
Me.
Ellis?
Ellis.
Most police officers are, you know, if you go and talk to them, they're very glad to help you.
Oh yeah.
I think they want to see you get it right, and they love being interviewed positively.
Yes. And I have three who are basically on speed dial for me. Um, my best friend, going from farther out and bringing closer in, my best friend lives in New Mexico, and her son is a deputy sheriff in the San Juan County Sheriff's Department. And I think he is maybe was a writer in a former life because some of the police officers that I've emailed and asked questions, I get these little short, short answers. And when I email Kevin with a question, I get an email that's like, this long, with all sorts of, well, you could do this or you could do that, or how about that? He has fun with it. And then there's a retired uh, cop up in Erie, which is where I want to set the new series. And he's retired because he was shot. So he has some very unique perspectives on the profession. And I've picked his brain a lot. And usually when I email him and ask him, this is the scene, this is what I want to have happen, he'll tell me, nope, it wouldn't happen that way. And when he tells me what really would happen or how the police really would handle it, it's like so much better than what I thought of. And yeah, our local chief of police, I've sat in the office with him and picked his brain a time or two as well. So
Will your new series have an amateur sleuth or a professional?
It's like with Pete and Zoe, there'll be two. The professional police detective with the Erie department, and the female Emma is a freelance photographer who was originally from the Pittsburgh area and has lost everything. She's dealing with survivor's guilt and a stalker, and she's moved to Erie to get away and to start over, and she's living in a 17-foot camper trailer in a campground on the bay, on Erie Bay.
Ooh. Wouldn't want to do that in the winter.
Well, no, and I did think of that because the campground, I'm using real locations for it, and the campground closes in the winter, so I figured, well, the first book takes place in May, so we're good. And if it does make it to winter, she can house sit for somebody, because there are people who have houses up there and then move, they're snowbirds, they go south for the winter.
Okay. We have someone who, Polly, of course, wants to go back to the agent question, which is always a burning issue for all of us. What do you think an agent could do for you now that you haven't done for yourself?
Um, deal with contract issues. um, going forward, I would like an agent to help me with like the different rights that like on the audio rights. So this is just us here. We can talk about that, right, Linda? Lovely. I don't anticipate being able to get the rights back to the books that I've already published, but I would like to get some rights back because they're never going to do anything with, you know, large print foreign rights. All, you know, there's so many rights that I signed away because as an agent I would fire myself. I'm not good at it. I need that kind of guidance. I would like, I mean, hey, you know, it would be great to, you know, get an agent and try for the brass ring of you know, a bigger press. Don't know that that would ever happen. My goal is to be hybrid. I would like to have one series traditionally published and then self-publish the others. So that's the plan and the goal. And it's the legal part. I don't have a good legal mind for reading contracts and, you know, catching all those nasty little things that they stick in there.
Have you thought about going to a publisher and then once you get a publisher, then going the agent route? I mean, that's what I'm thinking about doing.
Yes. That is also in there. Because what I've been doing, like I said, I've got 4 chapters and a full synopsis. So I've been querying agents with a proposal. And I've been getting lovely rejections. Some of the nicest rejections you can imagine I've been getting. But it keeps coming down to, you know, a no. So I've kind of stopped for now before I use up my entire list. And I figure I'm going to self-publish the racetrack mystery that I was talking about, finally get it out of the drawer. I'm running it through my critique group now and doing some revisions and updates. And that'll be my experiment into self-publishing. And then I'm going to self-publish the 11th Zoe. And while that's happening, once I get the 11th Zoe one finished, you know, the draft done, then I'll finish this first Lake Erie mystery. And once it's ready, I'm going to query agents again, the rest of the agents, or maybe go back to a couple who were bored, you know, on the fence. And then if nothing happens that way, or maybe at the same time, I'm still, we're talking down the road a bit. Yeah, I'm looking up some of the smaller presses that do take unagented material. And yes, if I get an offer from one of them, I will definitely then go back to some of the agents and try to get representation before I sign anything. That's the plan. We know what happens to plans these days.
And that kind of answers your question, right, Ellis? Ellis had asked if you had considered resurrecting the
Oh,
books you wrote that didn't get published, and you are trying to self-publish those.
just the one. I had written 2. The first one of the series, I has been I keep saying I'm on rewrite number 517 or 557. So yeah, it has been pulled out of the mothballs and revised a couple times. The last time prior to this was with that agent who was interested in doing it as a film prospect. So it's had some pretty good eyes on it, and it's pretty much ready to go. I'm just kind of updating it technology wise. But the second one, I first of all, I had lost it, and I finally found the flash drive that it was on, and I pulled it up and looked at it, and it hasn't been touched since, you know, 2007. And yeah, I can't, it's pretty bad. Not the writing, but it's not up to date, and times have changed so much that the storyline doesn't really make sense anymore. So, and also at the time I was writing those, I had a friend who was a trainer at the racetrack, and I mean, I've had horses almost all my life, but I'm not connected to racing the way Saucer is. But I have a friend who was a trainer, and she got me a groom's license so I could go and hang out at the track and get all that research. It was great. And I don't have that. She quit that and is now a nurse. So I don't have my research buddy anymore for that. So I think I'm just going to release the one that has been rewritten and
As a standalone.
as a standalone. Yeah.
We have a question. I thought you had to have a book finished before querying an agent.
Yes, if you are unpublished, if you don't have one out or haven't been published before, you do. But they say, and I've got a good friend who also had 3 books, and then they canceled her contract, and she got 2 different agents. Her first agent retired, and she got a second agent just on proposals, because the reason they want you to write the full book when you haven't been published before is because they want to know that you can finish a book. And I have 10 books out. If they want to look at my writing style, or see whether I can put together a mystery, they can pick up any one of those 10 books. But yeah, what I think, there's a couple walls that I'm running into right now. One is the current atmosphere with the police. Agents, their publishers aren't wanting to publish books, police procedurals. That's kind of being frowned upon right now. So there's that, and then there's just the basic fact that I don't know that I'm not a pantser per se, but I'm not used to writing that detailed of an outline or a synopsis. So I don't think, because one agent commented something about she liked the characters, she loved my writing, but there was this plot hole in the synopsis, and I'm thinking, that's going to change when I actually write the book. I mean, the one I'm writing now, it's like, oh, that's not going to work. Wait, I have to fix that. But, yeah, I don't know that until I actually start writing it. So,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, in theory, if you're a published author looking for an agent, if you're changing agents, you should be able to do it with just a proposal. But
Well, I'm going to jump to Ellis's comment, and she said, "Here's a hint: if you do your own contract work, get a publish by date." So I'm just reading that out there. But we do
okay.
have another question, which is, what is your favorite series and why?
Ah, um, I have 2 that I always like to. 2 series by 2 authors that they're the ones that when the new book comes out, I put everything else on hold and I read. One is Julia Spencer Fleming, with her Claire Ferguson, Russ Van Alstyne series, and it. People have told me mine's similar to hers, but honestly, I wrote the first book and a half before I ever read hers, and then when I read hers, I was like, her writing is so beautiful. Her use, her book should be lessons on how to write powerful verbs. I think she's just, I love her writing. I love her. I've gotten to be friends with her. The other series that I really like is Craig Johnson's Longmire, just because I'm a cowgirl at heart. So I like that it's set out west, and his characters are fabulous. and I love his dialogue, the way he writes dialogue. He doesn't need dialogue tags. You don't need to look to see who said that line of dialogue. Each character's voice is so unique and so different. You know who's speaking without seeing the dialogue tag. So that's those are my two. I mean, I've got so many that that I love, but those are my two absolute favorites.
Don't you think that Johnson or whatever has an advantage in that Indians have a different style, much different speech pattern, so that
But
helps identify
yes,
them a lot.
yes, but I mean, there's lots of different characters or people, speech patterns around the country, and just I think having any kind of diverse cast of characters will give you that option without necessarily being Native American. So yeah.
Still hung up on Indian, and I noticed that at least in the TV series, they call them Indians
Oh
usually.
yes, they do. They do. Yeah, they don't consider, they don't
put
like
them
the
out
term
some
Native
time ago.
American. They don't like the term Native American because they don't believe that they're American. They are Indian.
Interesting.
Annette?
Yeah.
Are you in your new book that you're finishing for the 11th in your series, are you going to deal with COVID-19 at all?
No. No. One agent that I was talking to really seriously, I thought that we were going to have come up with a deal. But she was the one who told me no COVID stories. For one thing, I think not just COVID, but so many things that are going on right now. The world is changing by the minute. I think I know there are authors who write, about big issues that are happening in the world right now. But by the time I finish a book and by the time we finish, get it published, the world's going to be a different place. And I don't know what that is. I don't have a crystal ball. So I'm not going to write about COVID per se. In my final edits, if I need to change anything because things are different, yeah, I might do that then. One thing I did notice, I'm not having characters shake hands. Just for one thing, I think that's one of those little tropes that I've relied on too heavily in the past when introducing characters. It's always shaking hands. So I figure, okay, we're not really shaking hands right now. I don't know when we'll start again, but I double reason to cut it out.
Right. There is a question from Alice also. Again, what is your writing schedule? We seem to want to know that from every one of our speakers. We're all seeking the perfect writing schedule.
Yeah, and it's different for everybody. And, again, in the world today, everything is kind of off kilter. My schedule is, and I give myself permission to change it as needed. But my schedule is I get up at 4:30 in the morning.
Ooh.
Not to write, but because that's what time my husband gets up to go to work. So we get up at 4:30. I get a cup of coffee because nothing happens around here without coffee. Send him off to work. And I'm usually here in my home office by 6 o'clock. A couple days a week, I do yoga real early. So those days I'm in my office by 7 o'clock. And I write for at least an hour before I take a break to have breakfast. And so I have to have at least that 1 hour a day that I write. And that's the book that I'm drafting, which right now is the 11th Zoe mystery. Then after breakfast, I have a to-do list each day, and it kind of depends on, like today after breakfast, the rest of my morning writing was working on a short story that was due today, and I made my deadline. I was invited to submit to a charity anthology. So I've been working on that as my second writing project. And then in the afternoon, I might, right now, this week is critique week for me. My critique group meets on Sunday, and we submit pages, 50 pages each to each other the Sunday before. So all this week in the afternoon, I'm working on my critique pages for my critique buddies. But that might be, working on revisions on the racetrack mystery, or it might be doing some accounting work, or it might be working on a newsletter or a blog post, or, odds and ends businessy stuff is in the afternoon. And in between, I'm checking in on Facebook or, doing some promotional stuff that way.
That's a full day.
It is. And I need a nap by like 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I've gotten up at 4:30.
Yeah, I need naps now too. Okay, are there any more questions out there? Anybody want to unmute and ask your question or pop it into the chat bar? And
It can also be about character arcs and development too, since that's what I was supposed to be talking about. Can you switch between books, or do I stick to one at a time? I think I trained for this years ago when I used to quilt. And when I was making a quilt, I'd have like 2 or 3 quilts going at the same time, but one I would be piecing and one I would be actually quilting, sewing the pieces together, sewing the layers together. So I can work on different books, but not at the same stage. I can't first draft 2 books at the same time. I can work on a first draft at the same time as I'm doing edits and revisions and rewriting on another one. But I think I don't really fare well when I'm trying to work on first drafts of 2 different books. That's me. Everybody has. You have to kind of find what works for you. I know people who write 3 and 4 books a year.
How long does it take you to write a book?
How long does it take? Well, my joke was always that my contract said I had to turn in a book every 8 months, so it took me 8 months. So yeah, I couldn't get it down any shorter than that for sure. This what I'm doing now, partly because you get lazy when you don't have that deadline. So it's taking longer, but I blame it even more on the fact of what this spring and summer was like. You only have so much mental bandwidth, and you have to be kind of kind to yourself if you just can't pull it together to write.
Mm-hmm.
There's tomorrow. Thank goodness I'm not under contract right now.
Yes.
You let yourself watch the news?
I watched.
Affect you?
Yes and no. I found out fairly early on that I watch the news first thing in the morning. When I first get up, we turn on the news because we want to see the weather and the traffic and all that local stuff. And I listen to the COVID numbers and all the horrible news then. And that's it. I shut off when my husband leaves for work, or even before, I turn off the news. And I really don't watch any more news than that. I might, pick up a headline or something just, through social media. But if I listen to the news or, read news stories after supper, I can't sleep.
So
I'd like to put in a commercial for Annette.
okay.
I've read many of her books, and all of them were well written, well plotted, and great reads. So if you haven't read her books, I think Sally will give you an idea. Make sure that we know how she prefers that you get them. So
Yes, I was just going, that was my wrap-up question. Annette, what is your preferred way for us to purchase your books?
Anyhow that you want to. They're available in print books. They're available in e-books. They're available in audiobooks. You can get them from your independent bookstore. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them just about anywhere that books can be sold. I really have a passion for independent bookstores because I've been on staff of our local independent bookstore here in the Pittsburgh area, and like 2 owners ago. But I still have, I'm very supportive of independent bookstores. So if you like print books and you have an independent bookstore, do that. Our local bookstore that like I said, I was on staff is Mystery Lovers. So mysterylovers.com. They ship. So if you have no other preference, you can do that. But really, I just buy books.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Annette. And I do want to plug our local bookstore, Fiction Addiction, which, by the way, everybody, we're going to be starting the 4th quarter Mystery Book Club the 2nd Wednesday in October, and I'll be sending out another email reminder. And I just want to remind everybody, look for an email from me. Sisters in Crime is sponsoring NaNoWriMo this year. And you can sign up on the website to get all kinds of helpful information about events that they're going to be hosting. And this Saturday is the Sink into Writing program from 1 to 3:45 in the afternoon. And you can log on. I sent out an email earlier today about that one for logging in. And finally, next month, Julie Mulhern will be our speaker. So I hope you all can join us then. Annette, I want to thank you. This was wonderful. I really enjoyed your remarks about the character arcs. It was very informative.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they'd like to toss out there?
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, I saw the question about the audio books. Tantor Media is the publisher of my audiobooks, and yes, they are available in Audible. So.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we're going.
Helen had a question. She wanted to know if you had to read them in order.
Oh, okay. No, the mysteries are self-contained. So if you pick up like book 10, and you won't be lost. Well, book 10 you might, because I was trying to wrap up threads. Let's say if you picked up book 9, you wouldn't be lost. But you miss all the character development and the character arc if you read them out of order. So, but I leave that up to you, but you won't be lost.
Read 4 of them. I like them very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I did. I read the first one, and I have the second one on my Kindle. Started it. Good.
Second one has a place in my heart because it's dedicated to my dad, and there's a lot that I drew from my dad in Lost Legacy. So.
Oh, very nice. Okay, thank you, and good evening, everybody.
Hey.
Bye-bye.
Bye.